I never thought I'd find myself in a situation like this, honestly. My name's Mike, and I've been married to Lisa for about 6 years now. We've always been pretty stable, the kind of couple everyone thought was solid. We had our arguments, sure, but I never doubted her loyalty. That was until I got hurt on that ski trip last winter. I took a bad fall, ended up with a broken leg and a torn shoulder. The recovery was supposed to be straightforward, but it dragged on longer than I expected. I had to go to physical therapy, and that's when everything started to seem off. At first, I noticed Lisa acting a little weird. She'd be more dismissive when I tried to talk about my progress. She'd brush past the subject or change it completely. Sometimes she'd get defensive when I asked if she was okay or if she was tired of the whole ordeal. I thought maybe she was stressed about her own job or just tired of the mess I was in. I didn't push too hard, but it nagged me. Then I noticed her phone going off more often, and she'd hide the screen. When I walked into the room, little things but enough to plant a seed of doubt. One evening I was sitting in the living room, watching TV, when I noticed her typing on her phone with a frantic kind of energy. She kept glancing up, looking nervous or guilty. I didn't want to invade her privacy, but something about the way she was acting made me curious. So I quietly picked up her phone when she was in the kitchen grabbing a drink. Her message notifications kept popping up. Nothing explicit at first, just some flirty texts with this guy named Tom, her physical rehabilitation specialist, I later found out. They'd been exchanging messages for a while, mostly about her worry that I'd be upset or her saying she was so tired of waiting around while I was laid up. I couldn't believe it. The guy she was supposed to be trusting with my recovery, and she was cheating on me with him. I sat there with her phone in my hand, feeling like I'd been punched in the gut. My hands trembled a little as I scrolled through the messages. It was obvious enough, innuendos, late-night texts, her saying things like, "Can't wait to see you again, and you're the only one who really gets me." Then I saw a message from her that made my stomach churn. "Tonight was perfect, can't wait for more." I don't know what I expected, but it wasn't this. I stared at the screen for a long time, feeling a mixture of shock, anger, and deep hurt. My whole world suddenly felt like it was crumbling around me. When Lisa finally came back into the room, I was still frozen, eyes glued to her phone. She looked at me caught red-handed, and her face twisted into a mixture of annoyance and defiance. "What are you doing?" she snapped. I handed her the phone without a word, and her eyes flicked across the screen. Her face went pale, then flushed with anger. She spat out an excuse, something about how I was snooping, that I had no right, that she was just talking to a friend. But I knew better. I knew that wasn't just talking. That was fucking cheating, plain and simple. And she knew it too. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk she always had when she was lying, like she thought she could get away with it. I felt my blood boil. All those nights I'd been lying there, injured and vulnerable, while she was out with him. How many times had I trusted her? How many times had I told myself she was just busy or tired? Now I saw it clearly. She'd been sneaking around behind my back. It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about the moments I'd been so helpless, vulnerable, needing her support, and instead she was with someone else, lying to my face. I wanted to scream, to break something, but I just sat there, speechless, staring at her. Part of me already knew what I had to do, but the shock still hadn't worn off. I was trying to process it all. How my wife, the woman I trusted, had been cheating on me with the very person meant to help me recover. After I handed her the phone, Lisa's eyes narrowed and she snapped at me. "What the hell are you doing, snooping through my stuff? That's none of your business." Her voice was sharp, but I could see the flicker of guilt behind her eyes. I didn't say anything right away. I just sat there, feeling like I'd been kicked in the chest. For a moment I thought about tearing into her, about yelling, about asking her why she did it, but I knew that wouldn't get me anywhere. Instead, I looked at her and said, "You've been cheating on me, Lisa. With Tom. That's why you've been so distant, so bitchy. Don't try to deny it." Her face twisted into a look of pure contempt. "Oh, please," she sneered. "You think I'd do something like that while you're laid up? You're so paranoid, it's pathetic. Maybe I'm just tired of all this rehab crap and I needed someone to talk to. Tom's just a friend, all right. Nothing more. You're blowing this way out of proportion." I clenched my fists. I'd heard enough bullshit to last a lifetime. A friend, huh? Then why were you texting him late at night? Why did you say you can't wait to see him again? Exactly how many times has this happened? How long has this been going on? She rolled her eyes. You're so insecure. Maybe if you weren't such a helpless wreck, I wouldn't have looked for comfort elsewhere. Besides, you're not exactly the most caring husband right now. I have needs too, you know. That hit me hard. It wasn't just the fact that she was cheating. It was the cold, bitchy way she dismissed it all, like I was overreacting. Like she was the victim here. I felt my pulse pounding, my mind racing with a mixture of fury and heartbreak. I'd always thought she was loyal, that she loved me. Now I saw her for what she really was, a selfish, manipulative witch who'd been lying to my face while I was recovering from a damn injury. I got up slowly, my whole body tense. You've been lying to me all this time. I trusted you, Lisa. I thought we had something real. Turns out I was just another sucker you used. I don't know what the hell you're trying to pull, but I'm done. I want you out of my house, and I want you to stay the hell away from Tom. She scoffed, crossing her arms. You think you can just kick me out after everything? You're damaged, Mike. You're not even functioning right now. How are you going to survive without me? That was the moment I realized things had changed forever. Her words dripped with venom, and that smirk on her face told me she knew she'd won a little victory that day. I felt like I'd been punched again, but this time in my pride. For the first time in years, I saw her not as the loving wife I thought I knew, but as someone cold and calculating. I knew I had to make a choice: forgive her, confront her, or walk away. I chose to tell her there was no way I could stay with her after this. The betrayal cut me too deep. My mind was spinning, trying to make sense of it all. I felt humiliated, angry, betrayed, but also a strange sense of clarity. I would get through this somehow. I had to. I didn't want her to think she'd destroyed me completely, but I knew I'd never forget the feeling of her lying next to me, secretly sneaking out to meet her lover. That sense of violation haunted me, and I promised myself that I'd find a way to make her regret it. I did. Know exactly what that looked like yet, but I was determined to come out of this on my own terms. The pain was raw, but it was also the start of something new, something I hadn't planned but couldn't ignore anymore. The days that followed were a blur of shock and cold anger. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. Looking back, there were all these tiny signs I'd ignored. Her disappearing into the gym during the weekends, the late-night texts, the way she'd get defensive whenever I asked about her mood or her plans. Now it all made sense. She'd been sneaking around, lying right to my face while I was laid up, vulnerable and trying to recover. That betrayal cut deep, worse than any physical pain I'd been through during my accident. I remember sitting in the living room, staring at the wall, trying to process everything. The rage was bubbling under the surface, but I knew I had to stay calm. I couldn't let her see me broken, not yet. I called up a lawyer that same afternoon, trying to get a sense of what my options were. I knew I wasn't just going to kick her out and be done. I wanted her out for good. I also needed to find a way to protect myself financially and figure out what rights I had if she decided to fight me on anything. Meanwhile, Lisa was still in the house, acting like nothing had changed. She threw a tantrum when I told her she had to leave, calling me paranoid and controlling. She kept insisting she hadn't done anything serious, just a fling, just some meaningless sex. She called me jealous, said I was overreacting because I was insecure. She even had the nerve to cry and say she was the real victim here, like I was the one who betrayed her. That fake tears, combined with her bitchy attitude, made me want to punch her in the face. But instead, I kept my cool. I knew this wasn't just about her cheating. It was about how she was trying to manipulate me into feeling guilty, into backing down. I decided to start packing my things. I couldn't stay under the same roof with someone who'd lied to me so blatantly, someone who thought she could just brush it off and keep acting like everything was normal. I moved into a friend's place for a few days just to get some space to breathe, to think. I knew I'd eventually have to confront her again, but I wasn't in any rush. I needed to gather my strength, emotionally and physically. The physical pain from my injury was still there, but this emotional blow was worse. It was like my entire foundation had crumbled overnight. In the quiet hours, I kept going over everything she'd said, everything she'd done. part of me still felt like I was living in a nightmare. All those plans for the future, all our vacations, the quiet nights watching movies, gone now, replaced by this sick feeling of betrayal. I kept asking myself how I didn't see it coming, how I could have been so blind. I'd been clinging to the idea that she loved me, that we had something real. Turns out, she only loved herself and whatever thrill she was getting from Tom. That realization was almost worse than the affair itself. But I also knew I couldn't let her see that she'd broken me completely. I had to stand tall, even if inside I felt like I was falling apart. I started reading. About revenge, about how to make her feel the pain she'd inflicted, without crossing the line into anything illegal or stupid. I wanted her to see that I was stronger than her lies, that I could walk away from this and still come out on top. I wasn't going to be the guy who got played and then rolled over. No, I was going to make her regret ever messing with me. I'd never let her think she could cheat and get away with it without consequences. One thing became painfully clear. I needed to find out how deep this thing went. Was Tom just a one-time mistake, or was this going on with someone else? I had a feeling this wasn't the end of it. I suspected there was more to uncover. But first I had to get my head straight, get the legal stuff sorted, and figure out what kind of future I wanted without her. Honestly, I kept thinking about how betrayed I felt, how stupid I'd been to trust her so blindly. That anger. It was like a fire inside me, and I was determined to let it fuel my next move. I wasn't going to just sit around and let her walk all over me, not anymore. Over the next few days, I threw myself into action. I couldn't just sit around feeling sorry for myself or letting her manipulative attitude get to me. I called a divorce lawyer, set up a meeting, and started collecting evidence, screenshots of her texts, photos of her stuff packed in boxes, anything that could support my side if she decided to drag things out. I also started digging into her social media, even checked her email just to see if I could find more clues. I needed to understand what I was dealing with, and it was clear she was still trying to spin it all in her favor. Meanwhile, Lisa was still in the house, acting like she owned the place. She threw tantrums, calling me paranoid, possessive, and crazy whenever I brought up the reality of what she'd done. She kept insisting I was overreacting, that I was just jealous, that she deserved some fun after all the stress I caused. She even had the nerve to say she was the real victim here, that I was abusing her with my accusations. That made my blood boil. I knew her well enough to see she was trying to turn the tables, but I wasn't buying it. I saw her for what she was, a selfish, manipulative bitch. One night I decided to confront her directly to get her to own up or at least give me some real answer. I told her I knew about Tom, that I had the evidence, and that I wasn't going to let her keep lying. She looked at me with that smirk, the same one she gave when she thought she was in control. She shrugged and said, "Yeah, I fucked him. So what? It's not like you're perfect either. You're not exactly the catch you think you are, Mike. I was just looking for some excitement, some attention. You're too wrapped up in your rehab to notice anything else." That comment hit me like a punch in the stomach. I felt the anger rising again, but I kept my voice steady. "You're disgusting. You think cheating on me makes you a victim. No, Lisa. It just proves how selfish and manipulative you are. I'm done with this bullshit. I want you out and I want a divorce." Her eyes narrowed and her face twisted into a sneer. "Fine, do whatever you want. You're just bitter because I don't need your broken ass anymore." That was the moment I knew I had to act fast. I couldn't let her keep tormenting me or wasting my time with her bullshit. I started packing my things, clothes, some stuff from the kitchen, anything I could grab, while she ranted and threw insults. I wasn't going to let her see me break, even if inside I was crumbling. I also contacted a friend who's a private investigator, just to see if I could get some confirmation on whether she was seeing anyone else besides Tom. I didn't want to be blindsided again. The worst part, I kept replaying those moments when she'd smile at me, act like everything was fine while she was out cheating. The betrayal ran so deep I felt like I'd lost a part of myself. I'd trusted her blindly for years, and now I saw that all of it was a lie. How could she lie so effortlessly? How could she treat me like I was nothing when I'd been so loyal? I wondered if she ever loved me at all or if I was just some placeholder in her life until something better came along. That thought haunted me every night. I knew I couldn't stay in that house anymore. It was toxic, filled with her lies and manipulations. I decided to leave that night with just a bag and a heavy heart. As I locked the door behind me, I felt a strange mixture of relief and despair. Relief because I was finally free from her bullshit, but despair because I was losing everything I'd built. My marriage, my sense of stability, my trust in people. Even so, I was determined to rebuild, to take control of my life again. I promised myself I wouldn't be her fool anymore. No matter what, I'd get through this, even if it meant starting over from scratch. Because the pain of betrayal only made me more determined to come out stronger on the other side. The days after I left that night felt like a blur. I stayed with my friend Mark, trying to piece my mind back together. The betrayal hit me harder than I ever expected, like a punch to the gut every time I thought about how she'd lied, cheated, and dismissed everything we had. I could still see her smirk, hear her dismissive tone, and it made my stomach churn. I spent hours going over everything, questioning myself, wondering if I missed signs or if I was just too blind to see how selfish she really was. I couldn't help but feel angry not just at her but at myself. How could I have been so naive? I had been so focused on my recovery, on being there for her, that I'd ignored all the warning signs. I was physically broken, but emotionally I felt like I'd been shattered into pieces. I knew I needed to get my head straight. I reached out to a lawyer again, started the process of filing for divorce. I also hired the private investigator I'd been talking to, just to get some confirmation on whether she was seeing anyone else besides Tom. I had a gut feeling this was just the beginning, that her affair wasn't as limited as I thought. Meanwhile, Lisa was still trying to manipulate the situation. She called, left nasty voicemails, accused me of ruining everything, and tried to guilt-trip me into coming back. She kept insisting I was overreacting, that she made a mistake but still loved me, that it was just a fling and nothing serious. The way she said it, like she was the victim, made me want to scream, but I stayed firm. I knew I wasn't going to let her gaslight me back into that toxic relationship. I was done being the fool. I also spent time reflecting on what this meant for me going forward. I realized I'd spent years being everything to her, her husband, her supporter, her confidant. And she'd repaid that by cheating and lying. I couldn't forgive that kind of betrayal. I didn't want to be with someone who thought she could do whatever she wanted and then come back, begging for forgiveness. No, I was done. I was moving on. I had to rebuild everything: trust, stability, confidence. It wasn't going to be easy, but I knew I had no choice. I refused to let her destroy me completely. One thing I did do was start focusing on myself again. I signed up for a new gym, started therapy, and made plans to travel solo for a bit. I needed to get away from the toxic environment she'd created, away from the lies and the pain. In some weird way, this betrayal woke me up, made me realize I'd been putting her needs ahead of my own, that I'd been so caught up in trying to make everything work that I ignored my own happiness. Now, I was finally looking at myself in the mirror and asking what I really wanted. The investigator finally got back to me with some surprising news. Lisa had been seeing someone named Dave, a guy from her work, for at least a few months. They met at a coffee shop, and she'd introduced him as just a friend at first. But the evidence showed they were more than that: long nights, secret meetings, and of course the flirty texts. Hearing that was like a slap in the face. I'd suspected she was seeing someone else besides Tom, but having proof was another thing entirely. It confirmed what I'd always feared, that her affair wasn't just a one-time mistake but a pattern. At that moment, I felt a strange mixture of sadness and anger. Sad because I'd lost the woman I loved, and angry because I'd been played for a fool. But I also felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally getting the truth, finally seeing her for what she really was. I knew I'd never forgive her, never forget the lies, but I also knew I was better off without her. I couldn't live with someone who lied to me, who betrayed me so completely. I made the decision to move forward with the divorce, to cut all ties and rebuild my life. I wasn't going to let her or anyone else hurt me again. I wanted to heal, to find someone who truly cared, someone who wouldn't cheat and lie. I learned a hard lesson. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to fix. But I also learned I was stronger than I thought. This pain, this betrayal, it's going to stay with me, but I refuse to let it define me. I'll come out of this smarter, tougher, and ready for whatever life throws next. The final days of that chapter in my life were a whirlwind. I finalized the divorce papers, and Lisa's attempt to manipulate the situation only made me more certain about my decision. She kept texting, begging, crying, trying to convince me that everything could somehow be fixed, that she was sorry and that she still loved me. But I knew better now. Love isn't supposed to involve lies, betrayal, or sneaking around behind someone's back. I refused to be the fool anymore. After all the chaos and heartbreak, I started focusing on rebuilding myself. The physical pain from my accident was still there, but emotionally, I felt like I was finally waking up. I'd spent so long trying to be the supportive husband, hoping that my patience and loyalty would somehow be enough. Turns out that wasn't the case. I learned that some people are just selfish, manipulative, and incapable of being honest. I had to accept that, let go of the anger, and move on. For the first time in years, I felt like I was reclaiming my life. I also realized that I'd been holding onto a false sense of security. Trust shouldn't be taken for granted, and people can surprise you in the worst way possible. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I survived her betrayal, and I came out the other side with a clearer view of what I want and what I won't tolerate. I won't let someone use me or cheat on me again. I won't be blind to warning signs, and I definitely won't be made to feel guilty for protecting myself. Looking back, I see this whole experience as a brutal but necessary lesson. Sometimes you have to go through the worst to realize your worth. I don't regret the pain because it pushed me to grow. Now I feel more confident, more aware, and more determined to find happiness on my own terms. The hurt will always sting, but I refuse to let it define me. I'll rebuild my life, better, stronger, and more cautious. And I hope anyone reading this who's going through something similar remembers, betrayal hurts, but it also reveals who you really are and what you're capable of overcoming. Trust yourself, stay true to your values, and never let anyone make you feel small. Life's too short to waste on people who don't deserve your trust.